Well, hello, afternoon, and welcome to Youth Work Live Conversations. My name is Mike, and I'm here this afternoon with the lovely.
My name is Carolyn, and I'm the Children and Youth Advisor from the Diocese of York, although currently not very far away from Mike as I live in Sheffield.
Very good. Well, I'm in Doncaster, and it's grey this afternoon because is it Storm Christoph is
on its way
sweeping in, which interestingly is almost a metaphor for our conversation this afternoon, because we are in lockdown number 3. Is that right? It feels like
forever.
Continuation, but we're in lockdown number 3. And we're at the start of a new year as well. And I feel that those two things compounded can present us with quite a disabling start to the year in lots of ways. So Carolyn and I are here this afternoon to hope to be a listening ear for youth workers everywhere struggling a little bit, and giving you permission to be real and honest about how things are. Don't you think, Carolyn?
Yeah, I think there was a great deal of hope, wasn't there, that 2021 was going to be so much better than 2020. And then just a couple of days into the new year, we're back into a new lockdown. All the plans that we had, we're having to rearrange. And I think there's a huge sense of despair, and some of that hope has turned into hopelessness. And that's okay. It's understanding that actually we are allowed to feel despair. We are allowed to feel that things are really rubbish. Because that's part of having faith. That's part of living in the world that God has created.
So when we're feeling full of positivity and optimism for the year ahead, maybe with the news of vaccines and things is enough to inspire you and to continue on. And maybe you've had some really creative ideas at the start of this year for your youth ministry, and you're excited to see how that rolls out. Maybe that's you, but also maybe you're on the other side. You might even be on both. Let's face it, sometimes even in the same day we can feel super positive one minute, but then also like, we've been hit in the face with a frying pan the next. Possibly when the church leadership kind of throw another curveball and say, well, you can't do it like this, and you're like, oh, I've spent ages trying to work this out. Or maybe you just feel that actually there's some of your young people that you've completely lost contact with over this last few months, and you're like, where are they? I'm really worried for them. So we want to kind of stand with you in that mix of emotions, and hope to offer you some hope as well in that. And we're also just going to pray with and for you this afternoon. So if that's where you're at, and if that would be helpful, then please stick around. We haven't got a time, have we, Carolyn? We're just going to go through a few ideas here, and then we will finish at some point.
Yeah, we're just going to roll with it really and see how it goes. But try and provide a bit of space for you to feel the feels. As Mike said, you might be feeling really upbeat, really positive about what's happening, making plans for post-lockdown, or you might just be really fed up with sitting, looking at a screen and not actually having any real interaction with people that you love and people that you're paid to work with. So there's a whole range of feelings that you might be having, and it's okay to have them. It's okay to feel really rubbish in this time and have a good week. It's okay to feel a little bit smug, but actually you're okay. But actually we want to stand with everyone in whatever position they're in, and ask each of us to stand with each other as we hold this space of prayer, hope, less hope, and anything in between.
Carolyn, how are you doing? How are you doing at the beginning of this year? Obviously, your role and my role a little bit different to the average youth worker, as we have sometimes more of an oversight role and encouraging youth workers. But how are you doing at the beginning of this year?
To be honest, Mike, I think I'm very up and down. Yesterday, I crawled back into bed with what felt like the worst headache on the planet. And I think it is just stress. And then I feel guilty for feeling stressed and worrying about things when I have a job, when I'm able to do my job, because I can do it on screen. But I miss human contact. I'm very fortunate there are 3 other adults in the house, so I have people to talk to, but as a massive extrovert, that simply isn't enough. And when I do occasionally go to shop, the people there get a little bit scared because I chat to them like they're my best mate. So it is a roller coaster. There are good days and there are bad days. What about you?
I'm doing okay. I'm more of an introvert, so I like my private space. But there are 5 of us in the house, and that can be quite tough. I think when I've got 2 teenagers and a 7-year-old. And having everybody in the same space sometimes can be a recipe for explosion. Is that a suitable word? And other times, everyone retreats to their own room and space, and you're kind of like, is anybody here still? I can't hear anything going on. There must be something going on. But I think on the inside, I'm doing okay. I've found, the last few months hard to establish sort of a discipleship rhythm. I think that the lack of routine hit me and continues to hit me. So whereas I had a routine of getting up at a certain time and spending some time with God and doing different things throughout my day, although I'm still working, but the boys aren't getting up to go to school, and I don't have to be up quite as early as I was. And so, the routine and stuff is one of the things that affects me more. And then I'm frustrated with myself that things have slipped, and I don't feel quite as, in the right place as I should be. But yeah.
How do you find it in terms of giving yourself space? Because one of the problems with working at home in front of a screen is that you could work 24/7, and if you do go off to have a chat with one of the boys or whatever, are you able to compartmentalize that, or do you find that you feel guilty for not being sat at the screen?
I feel like I should be sitting on a comfy seat now and just having this counselling session. This is lovely. I do feel it's mixed, because there are times when I have a lot to do in the day. If you've been in a number of meetings, then meetings generate work, and I think some days I feel quite pressured, and so then with my family I can be quite short. I just feel that they're listening. I'm sure they won't even bother watching. But there are times when I'm like, no, yes, no, you need to be out of the room. Even just before we started here, I went around the house and just said, I'm on the internet from 2 until maybe up till 3. So please don't bash in through the doors. And, so there's the pressure of working in this space and being able to still be polite and kind to my family when you feel the pressure of work. And then at other times when days are easier, it's easier to be interrupted. Certainly my 7-year-old does like to come in and see who is on the screen today, and he likes to stand behind me and just stare at people until people start waving at him, which is lovely. And some days I'm good with that, and other times I'm like, you just need to be gone. Can you go and do something else, please? And then I think, oh, everybody's watching. What a nasty dad I am. So yeah, it's this juggling act, and I know different people have different situations, and if you're watching and you have some of those feelings because family are around in and out of your space, then we stand with you in that. But likewise, if you're on your own, and I know we've got a message from some youth workers who've sent some video clips in. I know one of those people lives on their own and finds that being a struggle. Certainly when you are of a more extrovert personality type, and those physical contacts and meeting with people is important. There are times when I think, well, you could have some interactions with my family so that I could hide in my bedroom. But it's all a balancing act. It's all a balancing act.
Yeah. But it's really hard, isn't it, to create that balance, and I think that's always an issue in youth work, that we are having to balance wanting to be with the young people all the time, wanting to serve well, wanting to be, sort of unconditional in our love, but also having to protect ourselves and, not be rescuers, and all of those different issues. And that's really hard in real life. But I wonder if people are finding that harder online, because actually you're available much more via technology. The other day I've started outdoor swimming and I came back and it was so cold. I was still wearing my hat on screen when somebody came in on the Teams meeting, and I had forgotten I was still wearing the hat and had this sort of moment of, oh my goodness, I look utterly ridiculous. So there is something about, isn't it, that balance of managing the expectations of us and our expectations of ourselves and what we can actually deliver.
Yeah, no, that sounds very true and very wise, Carolyn. I wonder, should we go to our little video?
Yes, let's see what other people have got to say.
We did put a little notice out a few weeks ago on this Facebook group, asking youth workers anywhere to let us know how they're feeling at the start of this year. So we have heard from 4 lovely, beautiful people, and they have this to say to us all.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah and I'm a youth worker based in Doncaster. Usually my job looks like organising big youth events, but also smaller youth groups, discipleship groups, some schools work and some mentoring. And going into this new lockdown and this new year, I actually feel okay. I think last time's lockdown has given me some insight into what works and what doesn't. Whilst engagement is quite low on our online youth groups, and we've been able to find different ways to engage them that's offline, such as doing goodie bags and writing to them. So whilst it's not ideal and I long for the day that we are back in person without any restrictions, for now I feel okay and I feel like we're doing the best we can to support our young people. But that might change. These things come and go, don't they?
Hi guys, my name is Johnny. I'm a youth worker based in Alsager, which is a small town on the Staffordshire and Cheshire border, as well as a few other small churches scattered across Staffordshire moorlands. Usually I would be running youth clubs on a Friday and a Sunday evening, as well as a few other community events throughout the month and the year, as well as something we would run on a Thursday lunchtime, which would be based in one of the local high schools. I know this lockdown and this pandemic has been so difficult for so many people, and it's no different within youth work, trying to find new ways of reaching young people and bringing young people together. But there is, as well as this challenge, there is this hope of this new year, this hope of actually ways that we can impact and bring Jesus to the light of life of so many young people. So there's this challenge, but also this hope.
Hi, I'm Kirsty. I'm an intern for the Centenary Project based in Sheffield. I work with a range of different ages, but mostly focusing on teenagers and youth. I've been finding this lockdown a little bit harder than the last. I am currently living by myself, and as somebody who gets energised and motivated by working with other people, particularly face to face, I've been finding it quite difficult not seeing as many people as I normally would.
Hi everyone, I'm Susan White and I'm the Youth and Children's Coordinator at Chesley Street Parish Church. I tend to work with lots of ages, so it's not just a youth role. When I think about the youth work that I do, it's predominantly in secondary school. I have a state secondary school that I work really well with, and I've built up some beautiful connections there. We tend to do prayer spaces, we'll have meditation sessions, I run chaplaincy from the school, so I'm very involved. I feel like since March I've been here in my tiny office at home, which is wonderful to have the space, but I feel like I'm disconnected from the young people, and my job's completely changed. I do a lot of this where I'm just talking online by myself in my tiny office, and I'm not really getting that connection with people, and I think that's probably what I'm missing most. Although I am staying in touch with the school, I find it really difficult to sort of get a sense of where the children are up to and how they're doing. That's me.
Wow. Thank you so much, guys, for sending those videos in. There was a few other people who last minute were trying to say, oh, can we send you a video as well? But we'd already put that together. Carolyn, what were your thoughts? There's some a real mix.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? That it is a mix. We've got some people who are feeling very different this time to how they felt in the first lockdown. We've got people who are trying to put a positive spin on it, people who are finding new creativities. But also, I think for me, the word that really resonated is that disconnection, that sense that actually, you know, youth workers are people, and we're not able to be with people. And I think that's a significant factor in whatever way that shows itself.
Yeah, Susan, thank you, Susan, for your honesty. I think, you know, we can all feel like that sometimes, can't we? That we're kind of stuck in this little room, you know, whatever room it is. For me, you know, this is my office, is my bedroom. You know, we don't have any other rooms. They're filled with children. I lost my office when the third child came along, you know, but so the corner of my bedroom is my office. So I spend all night sleeping here, and then after a little relief going downstairs for some breakfast, I'm back up here and spend a lot of my time sat in my room. So I can completely understand, Susan, how sometimes, you know, you can just feel like, if only I could walk out the front door today and meet somebody and do something. And I know we can go for walks with one other person at the moment in current lockdown guidelines, but I mean, I don't always make that happen because I think, you know, we're supposed to be minimizing our contacts. So there's kind of a bit of a guilt if you let yourself have that pleasure of walking around a park with a colleague or with a friend. So yes, I think, you know, there's a great mix of emotions around. I'm also encouraged by Hannah at the beginning there, who was saying, actually, this time around, I feel better than I did, you know, in the previous lockdowns. And I'm so glad that, you know, we have colleagues who, some kind of are on the up pedal, if you like, while others are on the down. And sometimes, you know, we move from one to the other, being able to support. And I guess, you know, one of our encouragements for doing this afternoon is to be aware of how you're feeling and feel those feelings, as you said at the beginning, Carolyn, but also to look out for friends, colleagues, other youth workers that you know who are in this ministry, who are finding it incredibly difficult to do what you normally do, and reach out to them and have a virtual cup of tea online or a phone call. Sometimes phone can be liberating. You can take a phone call and walk all around the house, which feels so different from being stuck at a computer screen. I don't know if you've
absolutely. And I think, you know, we have got used to doing Zoom. We have got used to seeing images, but you know, there was a lot of talk right at the beginning of the first lockdown about how mad that made us all, because we could see what was behind us, or that our hair wasn't quite how we wanted, or whatever. Yours is looking very slick today. You're okay. But you know, I think it's also recognizing that the people that we work with are exhausted as well. Certainly, you know, the feedback I'm getting from a lot of ministers is that you know, please don't ask me to do anything else. I'm on my knees already, and they don't mean in prayer. And so, but that can create some kind of conflict and feelings of guilt or frustration. You know, if we're on the up and we're ready to come up with a fantastic new way of meeting the young people online or whatever, and we're not getting the support from the PCC or, you know, our minister or whatever, that can be really frustrating. Or equally the other way around, if the parents are putting the minister under pressure for groups to run that we don't feel we can do. And of course, there's the issue that a lot of young people don't want to be online. You know, they have to do it during the day now because of school, and they don't like it. They're often much more self-conscious than us about being on screen. And it is exhausting. So actually, our wonderful ideas of meeting with them in the evening, only 2 of them turn up, and that can feel quite hurtful, if nothing else.
Yeah, we've had a few comments. Forgive me, every time I look over to this side, I'm actually looking at the other screen available to me and looking at some of the comments. And Andy Mill has written about dog walking being actually one of those survival things, I guess, you know, a coping strategy, a way of breaking the monotony of sitting at a desk at a screen. And I was just suggesting while the videos were playing that actually, you know, if we could have a rent a dog scheme, or, you know, some of us don't have a dog to go out. but yeah, whatever you've got available to you, I guess, to give you that balance to cope. And I think sometimes it is good enough to cope.
Yeah.
I think, there's a lot of churches that would promote a message of, we've got to do more than, we need to be victorious in every day, celebrating and being happy at all time. And there's lots of theology in there. I'm not going to argue with people. But I know for me also there's a lot of theology about being broken and being, despairing. And Jesus himself modeled that, perfectly for us, went through huge difficulties and pain and trials, as if to say, it's okay. Sometimes that is the path that you walk. And there might be something to learn there. You might not ever realize what it is that you're learning through it. But trusting in God through those dark places can be a real, an anchor point, I guess, for us. I had a little list, Carolyn, and maybe you can think of some of the kind of thoughts and feelings that we might be experiencing as youth workers. And I think a lot of people that I hear from do kind of mourn the loss of youth ministry that they've known, the chance to meet as a group and to laugh together and build those relationships and bonding together and eating together. All that kind of stuff has been taken. And for a long time now, we're starting to think, gosh, what do we do when we get back to normal? What did we used to do? I've forgotten. And there might be a real sense of loss. I
think there's also fear associated with that loss, that actually, when God gives us the burden to care for his young people, it is a burden and he holds it with us, but it is something that burns within us. And so if we're not able to act that out, if we're not able to do anything about it, then it can turn into fear that we're not doing enough for the young people, that they're going to walk away from God. And it's really hard sometimes, particularly when we're dry ourselves because we're not meeting and praying and worshiping in the same way with other people. It's really easy to forget that they're God's young people and that he loves them way more than we do, and that he holds them. But so fear, I think, is a big thing that we can just get really weighed down with.
Yeah, and fear that it'll never recover, fear that we've permanently lost what we had, in some cases years of relationships built up over this weekly contact. And suddenly pretty much a year. I mean, maybe we all like to round up, don't we? But there was a spell that we could start to meet some of the young people, although it was all very socially distanced, wasn't it? And outdoors preferably. Yeah. But the fear that we'll never actually get back there, because a year in a young person's life is so long.
So long.
People have grown up and out of the youth group maybe by then, and so you're right. I think it's a real fear and a worry that we have for young people, that somehow we've let them down, and we've lost the chance to ever get them back. But it is hugely important what you're saying, Carolyn, that we have got to allow God to be God. And that these young people are not our direct responsibility, although we share the responsibility with parents and the community and church and things like that. But yes, we have to trust that God has got this. Otherwise, we have no hope.
And also celebrate some of the new opportunities. I do a youth group with boys who've all got ADHD, ADD diagnosis. It's a very small group, and it used to be an hour and a half of hell in the church building as they climbed down the walls and that kind of stuff. We started meeting online with them in the first lockdown, and it's amazing because they stay pretty much in the same space because they're logged onto a screen. And, over time, as you say, some of those boys have got too old for the group. But we've had an opportunity to sit with two boys in particular who are going through really difficult situations at home in a way that we wouldn't have been had we been in the building playing hide and seek in the dark and doing all the other things that we normally do. So there are lots of things to celebrate in the midst of the loss and the fear as well.
Yeah, opportunities, isn't it? It's weaknesses and opportunities, I guess. And it's that balance always that and a ripple effect, I guess, of, you know, when you change one thing, other things can change, and they might change for the better, but they might change for the worse. And I guess is that part of the challenge of a youth worker, is actually to see the possibilities, you know, in the new surroundings that we find ourselves in. But that in itself can be tiring, can't it? I've heard of others who kind of get in a creative fatigue. You know, the first lockdown or 2 lockdowns, it's like creative overload. How can I do things differently? What can I do? I have to get some goodie packs sent out. I'll have to start doing prayer cards. I'll have to do phone calls. We'll do some online stuff. And as that maybe starts to lose its edge, you're like, what else is there left? I'm running out of creative ideas. And I think, again, that can be quite a sort of a brick wall for people who feel, I've tried everything now. You know, what else is there left? And you can get that creative block.
Yeah.
I think sometimes just even the guidelines that come out sort of every other week, you know, can leave us paralyzed. And like, so what can we do now?
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Carolyn. I get emails every now and then from youth workers saying, so, Mike, bubbles, 6, masks at how old, hand gel, what are we allowed to do now? And I spend a lot of my days trying to navigate, you know, the guidelines.
Yeah. And I never joined this job to read regulations and interpret them. That was never part of what I wanted to do or what I'm skilled at.
Yeah.
And I found that that's what I'm doing. And I think, you know, that's another thing, isn't it? That we've been put in positions that we don't feel passionate about or skilled to deal with. You know, certainly my experience is a lot of youth workers are tech savvy, which is, you know, great for me because I'm not. But we're still on very steep learning curves. And I think, again, that we perhaps are setting ourselves too high standards, that it's got to be all singing and all dancing, when actually just what the young people might want is to see our face and to play a scavenger hunt again. You know, because when we did meet face to face, they always had a favourite game. And if you brought a different colour pop, then you were in serious trouble because it's always pink pop on a Friday. You know, so actually, why do we then expect that because we're doing it online, we've got to be new and exciting all the time?
Yeah, very fair point. Very fair point. I think one of the other struggles that I pick up is that the goalposts keep moving.
Yeah.
And I know with the new strains of the virus that are popping up around the world now, and the greater rate of infection and spreading, that it does feel like goalposts keep moving. I feel just before Christmas, people were starting to think, you know, oh, well, soon in the new year, you know, maybe things will get, you know, maybe we'll still have to live within restrictions, but they'll start to ease. And of course, the new strains come in and it's like, oh my gosh, you know, is this ever going to end? Yeah. And you start to, well, if you're like me, an internal processor, you start to think, this could go on for years, but is it going to? Will the vaccines actually, you know, see the end of this, and then we'll be all right again for, you know, years, hopefully? Or is this just going to be one of a number of, you know, terrible viruses that hit our planet? Is this the new way of living from now on? You know, sorry, my mind goes over.
You've been watching too many apocalyptic films.
Maybe I'm not the only one, Carolyn, or maybe I am, but I do think, you know, sometimes people think, gosh, the goalposts just keep on moving. Yeah. You know, certainly, you know, for our kind of work, and when you're trying to plan, it's if you're a planner.
Yeah.
I know not all youth workers are. You know, there's a lot of youth workers that are, you know, seat of the pants. Let's just see, you know, what God's doing next week. But I'm a planner, and I know a number of youth workers are planners, and it's a killer because
it's really stressful.
What do you do for your spring term? What do you do for your Easter time? What do you do in the Easter to summer? What are you going to do in the summer? You can't plan anything.
No.
Because you don't know where we're going to be. There's no end to it yet, apart from people starting to dare to say sort of all September, October, you know, maybe by the autumn time, most of the population will have had this vaccine and we'll be able to see a return, you know, to some kind of normality. But again, you know, the windows are so flexible of when that might happen, and they get caught, and then they get pushed by the scientists, and then the politicians are bringing them this way. And again, it's very hard to navigate that.
It is. And I think for me personally, goalposts moving past Easter now was really, really hard emotionally, because we had one Easter robbed of us, and now we've got another one, and it just feels, as a Christian, that feels really hard. But also as you say, the stress, and I think that's something that we need to just be aware of, what's going on in our bodies. As I said yesterday, I crawled back to bed with a headache, and I'm pretty sure it was just stress. But again, I do that cycle, which I think a lot of us do, of guilt. It's like, well, what have I got to be stressed about? I'm able to do my job. I'm with people I love. I've got food. I'm in a warm, dry house. Yeah. I'm better than 99% of the population. What can I possibly be stressed about? But I think actually I'm stressed because I'm having to change plans all the time. And I'm rewriting documents that I've already read with different dates and different things. And that is really stressful. And, I think we pick up this stress and we don't realize that we're actually doing that until it comes out in a big manifestation, like a headache, or when we shout at the children, or whatever. But so I think I'd encourage people that are watching to really check in with their bodies. And the people that were commenting were talking a lot about running or walking and that kind of stuff. And I think that's a really good way of getting rid of it. I try and do what I call a sunset walk. So it's getting a bit later now that the days are a bit longer, but normally about 3 o'clock, I go out so that I still get a bit of daylight. But I feel like I've done, reasonable amount of work, so I don't feel too guilty. But I've got some sunshine. But again, I'm rubbish at going out for a walk unless I'm with somebody to talk to, or I have a dog. And I don't have either of those. So I have to set myself the task of posting a letter or going and getting a pint of milk or something that actually gets me out of the house, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because I know the benefits of going out and walking, but it's really hard to persuade myself.
Well, it is hard. And I think, we're all learning about ourselves, aren't we, through this time. And I think these are important lessons, because we think that we're so good at doing certain things, but we don't know until we're tested. It really has been a time of testing to see, how is your faith going to stand up through this? How is your sense of resilience and a trust in God going to stand up amongst, the changing seas that you stand in? How's your family and your relationships going to bear up through this? And it is a bit of a test. And I think sometimes seeing it as a test can help, because you're like, oh, okay, I've got to try and do well through this. I've actually got, this is supposed to be hard. So what can I do to be as positive as I possibly can? And that's a really important thing to bear in mind. I think it's maybe worth just reminding people at this point, if you've tuned in a little bit late, you might be thinking, why are they moaning on about all this negative stuff? We want some positivity in the world, please. Well, just to reiterate, we started off just giving each other permission to feel what you feel. And sometimes the bare minimum just to cope, and whatever it is that holds you just above, coping or not coping is good enough. But the permission to be real with yourself and to reach out and support others is really important. That's really our heart behind doing this afternoon's session. So we're trying to give voice to what you might be feeling and thinking, allowing you to be real with those things. But we also have, and maybe that's a good point now, Carolyn, to maybe move into some thoughts about how we can look after ourselves, how we can look after our spirits. And Carolyn, you had some thoughts about sacred space. So why don't you...
So I'm going to share my screen so you can see the website details. And this is something I found. I was in a really, really bad place in my life. My marriage was coming to an end. My ex-husband was dying in hospital, and one of my children was in Borneo, and my ex-parents-in-law had moved into my house. It was a really, really tough time, and I I knew that my faith was like one of the few things that was keeping me going, but I also didn't want anything that was too triumphant or, you know, in my face. And I discovered this website, Sacred Space, and I'm just going to click through it here so that you can see what it does. It's written by the Jesuits, and you go through a series of pages, and every day is presence, and it's just that sense of resting in God's presence and accepting that God welcomes you, whatever you're feeling. You don't have to come sorted. You don't have to come with any particular agenda. You just are in his presence, and that is a good thing. And then every day it reminds you of freedom. And, you know, in the situation I was in, it was particularly pertinent because I felt completely and utterly trapped by all the circumstances of life. But actually, what it reminded me of every day was my freedom in God. And I think even when we are in the really worst points, we are still free in God. And it's helpful to know that truth, even if we're not feeling it. And then we go into consciousness. It sounds like we've been unconscious before this, but it's just recognizing where we are. And some of the notes, you know, there's a guide in this corner here that you can have a look at, and it just helps you to think about where you are physically, but also where you are emotionally, where you are spiritually. So you come before God in your honest rawity. Is rawity an actual word? In your rawness, and that's okay. But just to touch those points, you know, when you might have a toothache and you sort of touch it with the end of your tongue and you're like, oh yes, that hurts. It's almost like doing that and going, actually, yes, this bit is really sore, God. This bit really hurts, and this bit is really frustrating, so that we're being honest with him about where we are. Then there's a Bible reading, and there are some notes on that as well if you want to, or you can just skip through it and just, you know, settle into the presence of God. And then you have a conversation. And what I loved about this was the fact that it encouraged you to imagine that Jesus was sat opposite you, with you, wherever you were. So I used to imagine that he was sat on the edge of my bed, and we would have this conversation, and a lot of the time I would just cry and I would, you know, reiterate just how rubbish it was. But actually, that using that Ignatian principle of imagining Jesus there was really helpful, because I didn't have to use words, and quite often in that conversation he didn't use words either, and you know, there was something very special with that. I was reminded of years ago, I went to India, Bangalore, and we visited a home for women who'd been rescued off the streets, and it was, oh my goodness, it was a traumatic place. It smelt terrible, and there were hundreds and hundreds of women in all sorts of states of trauma and disarray. And the students I were with were singing, teaching them songs and doing all sorts of things, and I just sat down next to this woman, and she asked me to stroke her hand. So I just stroked her hand, and as I stroked her hand, she fell asleep. And so I would stop stroking her hand, and she would wake up and she'd look at me as if to say, you've stopped stroking my hand. So then I would laugh and she would laugh, and then I'd start stroking her hand again and she would fall asleep. And we went through that process for about an hour and a half, I think. And when I was leaving, what I realized was the gift that she gave me, that actually that stillness and that presence and that intermittent laughter was just magical. And I think that's what this Sacred Space tool, you know, can give us if we engage with it, is those moments of just sitting, not saying anything, not even being able to communicate effectively, but sharing an intimacy and possibly laughter and possibly pain in that time. So yeah, Sacred Space, I'd really recommend that people engage with that.
That's brilliant. I've just put the link in the comments if you can't see it on the screen there. But I think tools like that can be invaluable. But again, they do need you to be intentional to do something. because we don't always feel like we want to be, lifted up. We don't always feel like we want to sort things out and process our thoughts. Sometimes we want to run away. We want some escapism. So we'll turn the TV on, or we'll do something else to distract us. But it's important to attend to our spiritual state as well. Even if it's, to agree, right, this time tomorrow at 3 PM, I'm going to do that, and actually make an appointment to do something like that can be really good, I think, for us. Because we don't always feel like doing it, even though we know it'll be good for us. That's really good. Maybe if others watching have come across, some really good resources like that can lead you through lament and pouring out your soul to God. If you know of any other resources and things, do pop them in the comment section for others to see. It'd be really helpful to have. Which would go alongside, walking the dog, which would go alongside, going out for a sunset walk, and other things that you might do. Maybe you've got a treadmill at home, and actually just pacing out on a treadmill, no matter what the weather, even when it's snowing, if that does your heart good, then, encourage you to be intentional about those things, so that we don't have to keep wearing that mask of I'm okay. Oh, yes, I'm fine, thanks. Yes, everything's good. Yes. Oh, it's hard, isn't it? Yes, but I'm all right. That's all right to say for a while. That's all right when we say that, because that's our way of coping. But there is an importance to look after our inner selves. So, yeah, thanks for that. That's a really helpful one. Do you think we should spend some time praying, Carolyn? Do you think we've got to that moment? We've got a bit of instrumental music that we can play, and Carolyn, you're going to lead us through this bit.
Yeah, and it's taken off the Sacred Space website. It's part of Novena, and Novena is a Catholic tradition of praying consistently for something for 9 days. We're not going to pray for 9 days. We'll be lucky if we manage 9 minutes. But actually, what I loved was the words of this prayer, and the fact that it reminds us that actually the Spirit, God's Spirit in us, God's Spirit with us, prays in ways that we can't understand, and actually takes our sense of despair, our sense of hope, our frustrations, our anger, our short-temperedness, and prays that, and communicates that effectively to God. So what we thought we would do is, we've got the words on the screen, and we're going to play some instrumental music, and I'm just going to read, and then just leave some time to pause, to allow your spirit to pray, for you to thank God if you're jubilant, to pray for others, if you're aware of people that are struggling around you, and to lament and to bring before God your own sense of frustration and the reality of the feelings, whatever they are. So Romans 8 verses 26 to 28 say, "Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. For we do not know how to pray as we ought, but that very Spirit intercedes with sighs too deep for words. And God, who searches the heart, knows what is the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. We know that all things work together for the good of those who love God, who are called according to his purpose." Therese of Lisieux said that love was her vocation in life, as it is ours. And never was this vocation tested more than in the last 9 months of her life, as she lay dying with tuberculosis. In that time, she wrote a note to her sister Celine. "Here is great love, to love Jesus without feeling the sweetness of his love, That is love pushed to the point of heroism. Jesus, I believe. Help my unbelief. Jesus, you are the real bedrock of my hope. Help me always to rely on you, especially in times of doubt and trouble. Lord Jesus, the needs of your people, open your heart in love for each of us. You care for us when we are lost, sympathize with us in loneliness, and comfort us in mourning. You are closest to us where we are weakest. You love us most when we love ourselves least. You forgive us most when we forgive ourselves least. And you call us to spread your love in whatever way we can. Lord Jesus, your heart is moved with compassion when we are suffering, when we need your help, and when we pray for each other. I ask you to listen to my prayer now. If what I ask is not for my own good and the good of others, grant me what is best, that I may build up your kingdom of love in our world. Amen.
I want to read Psalm 23 to us while the music plays. This is from the Voice translation. The Eternal is my shepherd. He cares for me always. He provides me rest in rich green fields beside streams of refreshing water. He soothes my fears. He makes me whole again, steering me off worn, hard paths to roads where truth and righteousness echo his name. Even in the unending shadows of death's darkness, I am not overcome by fear, because you are with me in those dark moments. Near with your protection and your guidance, I am comforted. You spread out a table before me, provisions in the midst of attack from my enemies. You care for all my needs, anointing my head with soothing, fragrant oil, filling my cup again and again with your grace. Certainly your faithful protection and loving provision will pursue me where I go, always, everywhere. I will always be with the Eternal in your house forever. Amen.
Amen.
Sometimes prayers that are written down or Bible passages that are written down can minister to us. It's a very churchy word, but they can help. They can go deep if we let them. And if that was of help to you, I'm glad. Do receive that. If now wasn't the right time for you and you want to come back to this video at another time, then do that. Go back to that part of the video just to allow yourself that space to reflect, to have God meet with you and remind you of his love for you. So we do hope that this afternoon has been a helpful experience. I don't know if you have any final thoughts, Carolyn. It's been quite a reflective time.
It has. I think it's about being real. and sort of accepting where you are right now, whether that is positive or negative, because actually very soon it'll be different either way. But yeah, just being real with each other and supporting each other in that realness.
Yeah. We've got one more song that we'd like to play for you, and we had the instrumental of it just now. You might have recognised it playing in the background. Waymaker. It's quite a promise-filled song to hold us at the times when we feel weak. Maybe. So we'd like to finish with this song with you. The words will come up on the screen. If you want to sing along, you are welcome. We won't hear you. You can sing as loudly as you like. That might not be true for Carolyn and I.
I was going to say, perhaps.
In the middle of this song as well, a friend of mine, Liz, has done a spoken word, like a poem, which really brings out the theme of the song in a more powerful way. So I hope it blesses you. I think this is where we will say our goodbyes, and we will leave with this song. So thanks for tuning in this afternoon. If there are other issues and themes that you would like us to address on this website, on this Facebook group, please leave messages. We do read them, and as a team we think and wonder about how we need to address different things that come up. And there will continue to be fortnightly reflection videos, our little sort of 3-4 minute reflection videos that we post occasionally on here, which I hope is a blessing to you as well. And if they're of any use to you in your youth work as well, then use them in those ways. So get in touch, stay in touch. We love you. We stand with you. It's hard, but keep going. Yes, this is Waymaker.
You are here, moving in the midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are.
You are our captain, our leader, our Lord, our Saviour, Creator, Star Maker, our King, our brother. You were there at the beginning, though you have no beginning. Everlasting, eternal, you have no ending. Bigger than the universe, yet you care for each one of us. Our mother, our father, our healer, our deliverer. You surround us, you rescue us, you fill us, you send us. You're the author of our days. You are worthy of all praise. You're the answer to all questions. You make a way through every problem. You can break any chain. You can comfort every pain. You are good, you are holy, you are wisdom, you are mighty, indescribable, all-powerful, our God. That is who you are.
That is who you are. That is who you are. keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working.